John Chapman is a Marine Corps veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. He places 3 shot glasses in front of him. He leaves one empty, puts 1 bullet in the second, and 2 bullets in the third. He begins calling out the names of his fellow soldiers who died in the war, counting down to see on which glass he will say the final name. The lot falls on the glass with 2 bullets, and he drinks whiskey from it. The more bullets, the less chance of survival. He then loads the bullets into the revolver's cylinder. Fortunately, or unfortunately, this attempt ends only with the quiet click of the trigger. That means today is not the day he should die. During the day, Chapman goes out to buy more alcohol when suddenly 2 armed robbers burst into the store. Without fear, John stands in their way and advises them not to aim at the stomach, because a shot there would leave the victim alive. The hero grabs the barrel of the gun and suggests they shoot him in the chest or head instead.
How about a hole in the chest? My favorite.
This provocation completely throws the criminal off balance and stuns him. Chapman grows tired of waiting and knocks one of them out. The second attacker rushes him, but John knocks him out too. In his head, flashbacks of the horrors of war rush by. He takes the alcohol from the store and leaves. That evening, war flashbacks once again won't let John sleep. He tries to distract himself with heavy training, but it doesn't work. In a fit of rage, he smashes the wall with his fists. The next morning, while Chapman is lying at home hungover, someone pounds furiously on his door. It turns out to be his sister Cindy, whom he forgot to meet at the airport.
No, I had enough to drink at the wedding.
How was that?
You know me, always a bridesmaid.
Knowing the state her brother is in, she isn't surprised by the outcome. She tells him she's come for a couple of days to attend a friend's wedding, after which she'll return to Brazil to continue her charity work in dangerous neighborhoods plagued by crime. John worries for her, but it's obvious there's no point in arguing. Cindy checks whether her brother is taking the pills that help with his psychological condition, and it turns out he has been replacing them with mint candies.
Mints? Really, John?
Look.
A couple of days later, Cindy leaves. She kisses John while he's asleep and tells him to take care of himself. Sometime later, Cindy is found barely alive on the ocean shore by 2 Brazilian police officers, Catarina and Paulo. News spreads that an American citizen has been brutally attacked. The U.S. ambassador is informed that she was found in the favelas and is barely clinging to life. Soon the news reaches John as well.
Hello? What?
When he is told this over the phone, he immediately flies to Rio de Janeiro to visit his sister in the hospital. Meanwhile, the police officers go into the favelas to question the locals, but no one tells them anything. Following the sound of gunfire, they encounter a detective who has already detained suspects involved in arms smuggling. He tells Catarina and her partner that they are doing a poor job since an American citizen was found half dead in their territory. He accuses her of being too soft with the locals and allowing crime to spread in their area. But his speech is cut short when a stone is thrown at his back, and everyone present nervously draws their weapons, ready to open fire. Realizing they are outnumbered, Santo lowers his weapon and proposes to settle things fairly by challenging the strongest local fighter to a duel. He pits his partner Barrera against him. The detective promises that if Barrera loses, his men will leave and no one will be arrested. In the fight, the huge police officer has no trouble defeating his opponent, easily knocking him out with masterful spins and flips. Santo loudly declares that he and his men will return whenever they want. The locals give him hostile looks. Meanwhile, our hero arrives in Brazil, where he is met by the ambassador, Manny Ridley, a fellow veteran and old acquaintance. Together, they visit the hospital, where Chapman sees Cindy lying in a coma. Once again, his mind is flooded with images of dead bodies that had once traumatized him during service. Detective Santo also enters the ward, introduced by Manny as the man in charge of the investigation. The ambassador urges Chapman to remain calm and leave all the work to the detective. John asks to be taken to the crime scene, but Santo replies that the favelas are no place for tourism.
Well, I'm not your regular tourist.
They agree to take the American to the crime scene. As they drive through the favelas, they share grim views of a world where children grow up to become new criminals, where God shows no mercy and fuels wars. John is greeted by Catarina, but during their conversation, the veteran mistakes the sound of an old car's exhaust for gunfire and suddenly pulls the pistol from Catarina's belt. In an instant, Around 5 guns are aimed at John, ready to kill him at the slightest move. The detective calms everyone down and explains the rules of conduct.
Tenha certeza, não causou nenhum problema.
She brings him to the crime scene, and John notices that it is a very crowded place. There must have been witnesses. She explains that here, people follow their own laws and never betray anyone. Salaries for clinic and school workers are long since paid by drug cartels, while the government has abandoned these neighborhoods. That's why the locals protect criminals. This is a huge problem for Katerina, because every careless action by law enforcement could lead to more victims and tragedies. Back at the hospital, during visiting hours, Cindy suddenly suffers a seizure, and Chapman calls for a nurse to check her vitals.
Cuidado intensivo agora. How long has she been like this?
Her condition worsens rapidly. It turns out someone tried to kill her again. Shortly before, a woman disguised as a doctor, of Asian appearance, had tampered with the life support machines. John recognizes her as the one he saw earlier when he entered the ward.
Everything okay?
Oh yes, time for her medication.
Demanding that police officers be stationed in Cindy's room, John later finds a young man named Kuka in the favelas, loitering by the shore. He may know something. John notices a necklace around his neck that belonged to Cindy and demands answers. Kuka and his friends attack, but they are no match for the experienced Marine. Kuka pulls a knife, but John skillfully disarms him and threatens him instead. However, the boy doesn't speak English, and the situation is saved by Katerina's arrival. She explains that Cindy worked with Kuka's family, and his sister Maria also became a victim of the local criminals. She disappeared without a trace. The necklace was a gift of friendship. Kuka hands Chapman Cindy's notebook, but John notices that many pages have been torn out. As John leaves with the police officer, the same Asian woman watches them and makes a phone call. That evening, we see a street lined with prostitutes, watched from a car by the detective and his partner. At one moment, a red Lamborghini pulls up to the women.
How much?
35. 50.
The cops rush out and start beating the man, revealing that this is actually a black market for underage girls, and such a crime carries a prison sentence. At the same time, John studies his sister's notebook and finds the phone number of a photographer who had recently worked with Cindy. He calls him and sets up a meeting at a cafe, where the man explains that Cindy had involved him in a series of photographs about the harsh fate of children in the favelas. He believes Cindy got into trouble because she was investigating the disappearance of underage girls who worked the streets at night.
Everyone thinks they're dead, but your sister was convinced that there's something going on. More than meets the eye.
She also asks the photographer to secretly take pictures of her, meeting with an informant. The man says that he gave all the photos to Cindy. John realizes the photographer is hiding something. As they part ways, he hugs the man goodbye and secretly steals a flash drive from his pocket. The photographer gets into his car, and suddenly there's a deafening explosion that kills him instantly and injures nearby passers-by. Seeing the blast, Chapman is hit by war flashbacks once again. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spots the Asian woman who had tried to kill his sister in the hospital. He chases her, and around the corner, he sees her get into a black SUV. At the same time, another black SUV screeches into view, packed with gunmen carrying automatic weapons who open fire. Barely dodging the bullets, John grabs a pistol from a security guard who has just been gunned down and fires back, wounding the attackers and forcing them to speed away. Soon after, in Ridley's office, the Marine explains that the attackers had strange tattoos on their arms. They could be part of the Japanese diaspora, since the suspicious woman was also of Asian appearance. On the flash drive, they also discover photos of Cindy with a man near a nightclub called Kronos, and Manny takes Chapman there. The man from the photos turns out to be a DJ, and John follows him into the bathroom. First, he knocks out the guard, then the DJ himself. He takes a briefcase full of documents and beats out of the smuggler the address of a client who might be connected to the attack. After learning the address, the next day Chapman, accompanied by Ridley, goes to pay the new target a visit. The place turns out to be a villa where rich men spend their time with beautiful women. Meanwhile, we see Santo at a police briefing, giving his officers instructions about the criminals. He says the time has come to hunt them down, without mercy or regret, to put them all in the ground. They prepare for a raid against drug dealers in the favelas.
Deus, pertence a misericórdia e o perdão, pois nós rebelamos contra ele.
Tiago prays before launching the assault. Many criminals are simply gunned down indiscriminately. John enters the mansion and sees a large number of half-naked women. His presence is immediately reported to the Asian woman, who is counting money upstairs. She says she will handle the problem herself, and that there's no need to inform their boss, Hiramoto, yet. A guard invites Chapman out onto the balcony, where John notices a van pulling up with young girls inside, among them Maria, Kuka's missing sister. At that moment, he is attacked from behind, but he quickly throws off the garrote around his neck and knocks the guard out. John finds the room where the kidnapped children are being taken and hides as a crowd of Yakuza gangsters in black suits arrive. Meanwhile, the police raid in the favelas continues. One of Santo's men also spots several Yakuza in black suits leading children into a car and stops them. The detective praises his subordinate, until suddenly... he lets the Yakuza walk free. The corrupt detective then informs his employers. The Asian woman says they need to cover their tracks.
The American girl? Everyone she could have talked to is dead.
The woman replies that the detective will get his payment later at the port. She then calls their boss, Hiramoto, and reports that the American is interfering with business and must be eliminated. Tiago will handle it. At Hiramoto's gathering, the man from the club, Lima, is also present. Because he allowed documents to fall into Chapman's hands, he is executed with a single strike of a samurai's sword. Little girls watch the execution in horror. Chapman continues through the mansion, but Hiramoto's men spot him. Using the briefcase in his fists, he fights off 5 attackers at once. But suddenly Santo and Bororo arrive, pointing their weapons at Chapman and demanding that he stop and hand over the briefcase with documents. Katarina and her partner also arrive after hearing reports of gunfire. Their presence prevents Tiago from carrying out his plan. Chapman leads the police into the room where the girls were being kept, but it is now empty. So he shows them the documents that prove the Yakuza's involvement in human trafficking. Tiago then demands that the Marine hand him the briefcase so it can be added to the case file.
Mr. Chapman, why don't you give me Mr. Lima's briefcase? We'll handle it from here.
John hands over the briefcase and starts to leave, but suddenly realizes he had never mentioned Lima's name in conversation. That means Tiago is also involved in the crimes. The Marine tells Katerina to go to the hospital and check on Cindy, while he follows the detective and hides in his car. Katerina arrives at the hospital just seconds before a hitman can finish the job and kill Cindy.
I forgot. Freeze, police, all that stuff.
Later, Santo arrives at the port, while John watches from a distance as children are herded into a warehouse. He also sees a ship flying the Japanese flag, prepared to smuggle the children to Japan. He calls Ridley and reports his grim findings. His friend disapproves of the Marine's plan, since John is unwilling to wait for backup. Using all of his combat experience, Chapman moves silently, taking out gangsters one by one as he advances among containers and barrels. Tiago is also nearby, and in a shootout with him, John pushes a forklift that traps the corrupt detective's leg. Tiago is about to die, but Bororo saves him, disarming Chapman and engaging him in capoeira. John counters his acrobatic moves with solid, efficient strikes. Santo frees himself from under the forklift and tries to help Bororo, but proves far weaker than his partner. Then Hiramoto joins in, slashing John's arm with his sword. Chapman dodges his blade, but soon he is surrounded by all 3 enemies. Santo attempts to stab the Marine with a knife, but instead, the blade ends up buried in Bororo's leg. Santo is then knocked out. In one final move, John rips the cross from his neck and drives it into his heart. Only the Yakuza boss remains. For the duel, Chapman arms himself with 2 steel pipes. Locking and redirecting the sword, he pushes it toward the enemy's throat. But Hiramoto reveals a hidden blade inside the hilt and stabs John in the stomach.
You put up a better fight than your sister.
But John should not have been pushed further. Gathering his strength, he smashes the Yakuza with powerful blows to the head, finishing him. Bleeding, Tiago gives John the keys to his locker, which contain a list of everyone involved in the crimes: policemen, judges, even government officials.
Ci Caterina. She will make it right.
The detective admits he is the only one in his family to live past 45. Dying, he says he has done many things, but not touch Cindy. At that moment, the enraged Japanese boss makes one last attack, and John shoots him several times. As he leaves, Chapman puts the pistol in Tiago's hand so he won't suffer any longer. Ridley and the police arrive at the docks, and Chapman frees the children from captivity. As for Cindy, her life is no longer in danger, but her health has been seriously damaged. I thought I'd feel better once the guilty were caught, but when I saw Cindy...
Stop. You can't think like that. You're going to destroy yourself.
Ridley offers to pay for her treatment on the condition that Chapman becomes a covert agent for the intelligence services.
When do I start?
Manny never doubted the answer. John is immediately given the codename Falcon, his old call sign from the Marine Corps.